Um, Hello and welcome to Empower and Sam's weekly online chat. My name is Francesca and it's my great pleasure to be hosting today. This year, one of our goals was to create a community, and this became more necessary after lockdown happened. In the weekly online chat, we like to have a weekly topic where you can receive advice from experts and then also have a chance to talk amongst yourselves about the topic in breakout rooms. We also record this, so this will be available from tomorrow on our YouTube channel, so please feel free to share this or view other talks from this series. Today's topic is Survivor to Superhero, and we're delighted to have Matthew Ode as their guest. At the age of 24, Matthew was diagnosed with stage 3 testicular cancer. After chemotherapy and various surgeries to remove the remaining cancer, Matthew encountered lots of complications and a period with several near-death experiences. For 2 weeks, he actually laid in a non-responsive coma and went into cardiac arrest and required 8 minutes of CPR to bring him back to life. An incredible and fierce survivor, I'm sure you all agree. We're going to hear lots about Matthew's story. I'm going to hand over to you now to Matthew before we go into our private breakout sessions, and there'll be a chance if you want to ask Matthew questions at the end. So please feel free to type them as the chat as we go through the presentation and the talk, and then we'll ask those later on in the session. So over to you, Matthew. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the introduction. And hello, everybody. I hope everyone's doing well. I'm actually from Cleveland, Ohio, so I'm in the US right now. So it's 7:30 a.m. Just super excited today because I really I'm going to be sharing part of my story, but the most important part is how can I tailor my story to helping all of you? And really, I think every single one of us right now, especially with this pandemic that's been going on for almost a year now, we're all going through some type of adversity, whether it's in, our health, whether it's in our family, whether it's in our career, our business, our finances, our own personal growth. And today, I just want to help you to realize that any type of adversity, any type of struggle that you're going through is not a bad thing. It's actually something that you can use, not just to better yourself, but to use it as a story and to use it as a message to help other people, such as myself. So really excited to share my story, my message today, and I hope this gives value and some type of help to you guys as well. So, to start off my story, I always start with a very specific date. It's March 17th of 2016. I was 24 years old at the time. It's, I don't know if you guys celebrate what's called St. Patrick's Day, but in the US, we celebrate something called St. Patrick's Day here. And, I was just out hanging out with my friends, and I run into this girl. And, we get to talking. Her name was Lauren, and I ended up getting her number that night, which was, obviously a plus. And, within a week or two, we start talking more. And within a couple months, we start dating. And at the time, I was very healthy, a personal trainer, and me and Lauren were just, we're doing all these summer activities. We're going out, we're hiking, we're kayaking, all of these things. And all of a sudden, I started to notice these minor back pains. And, at 24 years old, you think you're invincible, you think that everything's fine. And for me, I just kind of let it go. And months and months and months progressed in it. And the back pain just kept getting worse. And all of a sudden, one night, I am hanging out with Lauren, and it's now August, and all of a sudden I start puking up blood. And, immediately I get rushed to the emergency room. They do a blood test on me, and they find out that I had lost 2/3 of the blood circulating in my body, which is actually equivalent to being shot with a gun. So I get rushed into the emergency room where, or the emergency surgery, where they end up giving me 6 bags of blood, and they wanted to find out what was causing the bleeding. So the next day I end up waking back up. I am in the recovery room, and, I'm thinking it's over. I'm thinking, I'm ready to just go home. And all of a sudden the doctor walks in, and he has this blank stare in his eyes. And immediately I knew something was dead wrong. It was just me and my parents at the time. So he walks over to my parents and he asks them, he says, "Can I speak to you two in private?" And immediately I stopped him and I said, "Well, whatever you're going to tell them, you can tell me." So he sits down, he ends up grabbing my hand, he looks at me and he says, "Matt, we have found an 11-centimeter tumor in your small intestine. We believe it is cancerous, and we have to rush you to the main campus of the Cleveland Clinic immediately," which is one of the top hospitals in the country, which was, thank God, only, about 30 minutes away from me. And I just remember looking over at my parents at the time, and they're obviously crying. And the only thing I could think of, instead of being completely broken down, I asked myself, how can I be strong in this situation? How can I be strong for my parents? How can I be strong when I have to tell the news to Lauren and my friends and my family? And this is my very first piece of advice for any of you. We are all going to get unexpected news in our life. It doesn't have to be cancer. It can be a lot of different things in life. But if you can look at life as, how is this happening for me, instead of why is this happening to me? I'm going to say it one more time. If you start saying, why is this happening to me? All you're going to do is start creating excuses. You're going to start blaming other people. You're going to have self-pity for yourself in a situation that most likely you couldn't control. Or you could say, yes, for my example, cancer is very unfair, but how is this happening for me? How am I going to use this as a lesson to not just better myself, but to help other people in the long run? So, any obstacle that you're facing in your life, just remember, you can look at it as a positive way, even though it seems unfair and it may not be, exactly what you expected. So right after that, I get rushed to the Cleveland Clinic, where they do a bunch of tests on me, and they find out that I had the highest stage of testicular cancer. So if anybody has ever, known somebody who's gone through cancer, I hope nobody in here has gone through it. There's usually 4 stages of cancer. Well, mine was what's called stage 3C, which is technically the highest stage of cancer. So immediately I had family and friends flooding in, and I was still emotionless because I just didn't really, I guess for myself, I just didn't, really, I was still in a shock mode, I guess you could say. I didn't really understand what was going on and everything. But as soon as Lauren walked in, all of my emotions started flooding, because we'd only been dating for 2 months at that time. So to put that burden on her, I was like, if she doesn't want to be with me, totally fine. I completely get it. But instead, we pretty much, locked eyes. We started crying, and I knew right then she's going to be my, guiding angel throughout this entire journey. So, that's my next thing is who is that person in your life that, no matter what you're going through, is going to be there for you? A lot of us try to fight our challenges, our struggles, our setbacks alone. And all it does is it creates this massive baggage that we can't open up, that we can't share, what we're going through. And all it takes is opening up to one person we trust, one person that we care about. And when you do that, I promise you, a lot of our anxiety, a lot of our stress, a lot of our pain in our life will be released, because we're allowed to just open up and share with what we're going through. And I knew she was going to be that person for me. So as soon as that was done, I was immediately put on chemotherapy, like that day. And, within a week, I started losing my hair, started to, do all the symptoms. I was fatigued, nauseous, everything. And, the chemotherapy lasted about 3 to 3.5 months. And, throughout the chemotherapy, I did have some struggles for sure. One of the hardest mental struggles I had to face was my 3-year-old puppy ended up passing away because he had cancer 6 to 8 months before me. And I actually took him to all his chemo sessions, and he was like my best friend. So we were fighting this together. And to lose him, I actually started to break down. I started to go into that why is this happening for me? And, I don't push faith on anybody, but part of my story is a little faith-based, and, whatever you believe in, totally fine. But for me, I started to blame God. I started saying, why are you doing this to me, God? Why is this happening? And then, I remember I didn't even want to go to my chemo sessions. I would just lay in my bed and have this self-pity, until one day I just remember waking up and I said, is this what my parents, is what anybody in my life would want me to do, is just start to give up on myself? And I said, absolutely not. So you know what I did? I started to do one little thing every single day to get myself better. Meaning, a lot of the times in our journey in life, we want to get to this destination, but we're not willing to do little steps to actually get there. We just want to go from X to Y, or from A to Z in, such a short period of time, whether it's instant gratification, or we want to, impress people or do whatever it is in our life. But I'm telling you, you have to take one step at a time every single day to get to your destination, and realize that you are on the right path. And realize that it will take some time, but you will get there if you never give up on yourself. And that's what I said. I said, moving forward, I'm never going to give up on myself, no matter how hard, how difficult the road may be. So, after a few months, I finished chemotherapy, and, right after chemotherapy, we ended up hosting an event. My dad said, you know what, to celebrate chemotherapy, I want to host an event on Thanksgiving morning. Once again, I don't know if you guys celebrate what's called Thanksgiving, but in the US, we celebrate a holiday in November. It's called Thanksgiving. And, pretty much what we did in the morning, there is a race that goes on in our city. There's about 5,000 or 10,000 people that show up. But my dad said, we're going to have people come that morning outside. It was like 32 degrees Fahrenheit, which is, I think, 0 degrees Celsius where you guys are. And, we had no idea how many people were going to show up. And we ended up having over 400 people show up that day just to support me through chemotherapy. And it was absolutely incredible, because the really cool part about it is when you are going through challenges in your life, a lot of the times we think nobody's there. We don't know if anybody cares about us. We don't know if there's going to be anybody there to support us. And I promise you, if you're willing to open up, and I didn't say you have to open up to the world, but you're just willing to open up and share with what you're going through, you are going to get so much love and support that you never even knew existed. And it was just such an incredible day. So many amazing people in my life. And, I just want to let you know there are people there for you if you're going through a difficult time right now. So immediately after, I end up going to my oncologist, where he sits down with me and he says, Matt, we have some good news and we have some bad news. Good news, your tumor is shrunk from 11 centimeters to 3 centimeters. Bad news, it's wrapped around what's called your inferior vena cava. Now, your inferior vena cava is a central vein that goes from the bottom of your body to your heart. It's like your main blood supply to your heart almost. Not your main, but one of them. It's a big vein that goes there. They said we're going to have to do a 10 to 12 hour surgery to remove the vein with 4 different surgeons involved. We don't know the complications that are going to entail, and you have to have your surgery in 3 weeks. So needless to say, that was the longest 3 weeks of my life. But eventually I got there. I got the surgery, and it ended up being 10 to 11 hours where they did remove the rest of the cancer in my body. They removed the tumor and they removed the vena cava. Now, here's where the real complications came into play. Chemo was very difficult, but this part was definitely the biggest challenge of my life. So when I went to the surgery, I was about 140 pounds. And before that, I was about 185 pound personal trainer. So I lost about 40 pounds, 40 to 45 pounds. Coming out of the surgery, I had gained close to about 50 pounds. I was almost 200 pounds coming out of that surgery, because what had happened was when they did the surgery, I had massive swelling in my stomach that caused me to go into survival mode. So for a full 2 weeks, I had this massive, pretty much fluid in my stomach, and the doctor said it should eventually drain out of my stomach. And all of a sudden, one day, the draining just stopped. It was supposed to keep draining out of my stomach. And within minutes, I was in so much pain that they rushed me to the emergency room, where they ended up draining 7 liters of fluid out of my stomach, caused me to go into complete kidney and liver failure. I had a cone drilled inside of my head to relieve brain swelling. I had a catheter in my chest and in my neck because they thought I was going to be on dialysis the rest of my life. And that's when I ended up falling into a 2-week non-induced coma as well. And, when I was talking about faith, this is kind of where faith really came into play. And, for me, we ended up having 3 massive prayer services where hundreds of people would go to church and just pray for me, just pray for recovery, pray for, healing me. And in the middle of the last prayer service, right in the middle of the last prayer service, was the day that I woke up from my coma. And here's how I ended up waking up. So Lauren and my parents never left the room while I was there. And Lauren every single day would come up to me, grab my hand, and just tell me, Matt, please, it's time to wake up. And day after day after day, I wouldn't wake up. And all of a sudden, the day that last prayer service was going on, many prayers, I ended up waking up. And, it wasn't like I could just get up or do anything. It was actually all I could do is open my eyes and wiggle my fingers at the time. So after that, about a week later, I also had a breathing tube in my mouth, so I couldn't talk at the time. A week later, they ended up taking the breathing tube out of my mouth, and they ended up going to take out one of the catheters in my neck. And as they did so, I was still laying in the ICU. I ended up having an air rhythm heartbeat. I ended up going into cardiac arrest, and they ended up having to do 8 minutes of CPR on me to bring me back to life. And I ended up going into another 1-week coma right after that as well. So at this point, I'm in the ICU for almost a month. I end up waking up, and it's now Valentine's Day. So a lot of these are like, it's crazy, but a lot of these are like holidays that I'm kind of sharing with you guys, but it's just crazy how this is happening. So, it's now Valentine's Day. I wake up and I can't move an inch. I can't move at all. All I know is I have to completely learn to relive my entire life all over again. From laying in my bed to getting up and taking my very first steps took 2 entire weeks of 3 to 4 nurses every single day, constantly helping me, constantly getting me up. And after that, I started to take 1 or 2 steps at a time, 3 or 4 steps at a time. It was like walking all over again. It was like learning my life all over again. At this point, I was actually 4 surgeries in, because what had happened was they had to take out the fluid, surgery by surgery at a time. And I kept having complication after complication after complication. Here's my question to you. How many of you in life feel like you overcome an obstacle in your life, and then literally within days, you have another setback that brings you right back down? And then you're like, oh my gosh, I have to face that setback, and keep pushing forward. Then you keep going forward, and you take another step forward. And it's almost like you take 1 step forward and 2 steps back, 1 step forward and 2 steps back. This is exactly how I was doing it. But the thing was I knew there was going to be eventually a time where it was like a slingshot, where yes, I had a setback, but it's almost like it keeps coming, it keeps coming, it keeps coming. And eventually you release and you will keep pushing forward. And, it took me a little bit, but eventually I persevered. I was out of the ICU room after over a month and a half. And now I'm finally into final stages of recovery. And, after that recovery, I was in there for about 3 to 4 days, but I still knew something just wasn't quite right. It just didn't feel right to me. And they're like, the nurses go, Matt, you're doing so great. You're doing amazing. And, we're going to get you out of here. We want to get you out of this hospital within a couple of weeks. So we're going to take you off to your final stages of physical therapy. As they're wheeling me in my bed to my final stages of physical therapy, I end up looking down, and my stitches popped open, and sorry to get a little, but my spleen was sticking out of my stomach, and I had to get rushed into a 5th major surgery, where they ended up having to do what's called an open wound surgery on me. This is where they couldn't close my skin back up, so they had to leave an open wound with a mesh on it. I ended up back in the ICU room, and at this point, I had officially hit rock bottom in my life. I remember waking up, and this was the scariest part, because when I woke up from my coma, I didn't know where I was. But this time I knew exactly where I was, and the scariest part was I had my hands tied to the bed, I had my feet tied to the bed, and I had a breathing tube in my mouth, so I couldn't get a hold of nurses. So for 2 days, I had to sit there and just be by myself. It was probably one of the most life-changing moments, because I remember praying and just saying, I am in the lowest point in my life. And let me ask you this. If you feel like you have been, or you are in a very low part in your life, guess what? You have 2 options. I said, I can give up on my life right now, and I'm done, totally done. I gave it my all. I tried. Or I said, I am in the lowest part, and guess what? The only place I can go is up. That's it. That's all I can do. And as soon as they, released the ropes and released, the breathing tube, I got up and I walked further than I had ever done. Sometimes it takes people, sometimes it might take you to get to that lowest point in your life. And I hope it doesn't, but if it is and you feel like you're there, that is when you can make the biggest leaps and bounds in your life. That is when you can make the biggest change in your life, because you have nothing to lose. Think about it. We create these scenarios in our head. It's so bad because we create these scenarios in our head of the worst case possible scenario. It's like, oh, well, if I get fired from my job, then I'm going to go broke. Then my family's going to hate me. Then I'm going to live on the streets. Then I'm going to, you go to the worst possible scenario, and it's not true. You can come out of these situations. And I said, I'm going to come out of this situation. I'm going to be a better version of myself. So I got up, I walked further than I ever did. Within 2 days, literally 2 days after they did that, I was out of the ICU room into my recovery room. Within 2 more days, I was into my final stages of physical therapy. And that's where I had to learn to do everything we take for granted. I had to learn to, once again, walk again, sit on a toilet, get up off of a bed, go up 1 stair, not a flight, just 1 stair at a time, like things like that, just everything we take for granted. And after over 53 days in the hospital, I was eventually released, and I was released on March 17th of 2017, exactly 1 year from when I met Lauren. And she is not a coincidence, in my opinion, that we met on the day, because she was by far like my rock in this situation. She stayed all 53 days in that hospital for me, never left unless she had to go to work. She didn't go out there. Friday, she had her birthday. She had her birthday while I was in the hospital, and she spent her birthday spending it in the ICU room with me, where I couldn't even talk for 40 of the 53 days. She would just spend it there. And, you know, it's just, once again, like I keep telling you, whoever that person is in your life, I just want you to just take a step back today. Recognize who that person is. It could be a spouse, it could be a friend. I don't care who it is, but know a lot of the times we take them for granted. I'm going to tell you right now, we take them for granted sometimes. And then when we need them, we just rely on them. But instead today, why don't you reach out to them? Why don't you share your appreciation? Why don't you share how thankful you are that they are in your life? And it'll mean the world to them, but it'll also mean the world to you as well. So, long story short, after this, I got out of the hospital, and this is where, again, small complications started happening. And because I stopped having accountability for myself, I stopped having nurses, I stopped having the doctors there to hold myself accountable. So eventually I started to make excuses for myself again. And within a week, I was back in the hospital because I had a standing heart rate of 150 beats a minute. I had a blood pressure through the roof, and my temperature was over 104 degrees Fahrenheit. And, after that, I spent a week in the hospital. I got out, and I had one of the biggest discussions with Lauren in my life. And basically it came to the conclusion, if I don't do something with my life and take care of my mind and my body, I will not be here next week or next month or however long it takes, but I am not healthy enough to just coast through life right now. And I never wanted to coast through life, but I wasn't healthy enough to even do that. So all I did was I took a 180 in my life. Here's where the massive change in my life really happened. I started to pick up a 5-pound dumbbell the next day. That's all I did, a 5-pound dumbbell. And I started to do a bicep curl. The next day, I walked a little bit further, and then I ate a little bit healthier. So if any of you, maybe you're on a health journey and you're like, I don't know where to go, just start. Start before you're ready. That is the best advice I can give you. Start before you're ready. You think we need to have all these things in place to be able to start a business or to have a career or to make that perfect, pitch to your partner for whatever reason, or to start my health journey. Whatever it is, no, start before you're ready and take imperfect action. Imperfect action. Be willing to fail along the way. Be willing to fall down 5 or 10 times. If you look at the most successful people in the world, they've all gone through a rock bottom situation. Look at The Rock, he had $7 in his bank account. Or look at Oprah Winfrey, who actually was told she's not good enough to host her own TV or radio show. Or you have Michael Jordan, if anybody watches sports, he got cut from his high school basketball team. All I'm trying to tell you is we all went through difficult situations in life. Every single one of us, but it's how do you respond to it? How do you respond? How do you become a better version of it? So all I did was I started doing one little thing again every day. Just like I told you before, I went back to my roots. I went back to what got me successful in my life. And eventually I started gaining my weight. Eventually I started to heal myself. And a really cool story, before I get into lessons and then we can kind of do our breakout session, is about 4 to 6 months later, I gained about 30, 40 pounds, and I went to go see my ICU nurses. And as I went to go see my ICU nurse, because I wanted to share how well I was doing, the very first person I saw was the nurse who saved my life when I went into cardiac arrest. We started hugging, we started crying, and he looks at me and he says, Matt, I'm not even supposed to be here today. I got called in for a last second, emergency, and this is my very last day here before they ship me off to another hospital. And I just got chills, and I just knew that it was meant to be. And we still keep in touch. We keep in touch every month. We have social media, we have each other's numbers, everything. And just absolutely incredible. So, after about a year of, recovery, my wound finally healed. Like I told you, I had an open wound that took a year to heal. So I had to wait a year for the skin to grow back, which is very challenging because constantly I was changing out dressings and things like that on my stomach. And it was very difficult. And after that, I would say was a very big challenge mentally for me, because my whole life I was a personal trainer. I was very healthy, always fit. And to take out a part of my stomach, they literally took out my abdominals in my stomach, to have this big lump over my stomach, to have this massive scar. I was so self-conscious. I was so worried what other people were going to think of me. And it took me another entire year to just figure out that at the end of the day, we all have our own scars in our life. We all have our own difficulties. And it's okay to share with what you're going through, because the more that you share, the vulnerability that you share allows people to relate to you. People don't relate to people who have all this money and all this fame. They might like to see them and they might enjoy that, but they can't relate to that. But they can relate to the struggles. They can relate to the pain. And for me, after 2 years, it took me 2 years to heal myself mentally and physically. I started to ask myself, what is my next step in life? And maybe this is a question you guys have asked yourself too. Have you gone through a challenging experience in your life? Or have you just had this aha moment where you're like, okay, I feel like I can do something bigger. I feel like I have a bigger purpose. I feel like I can help so many people, whether it's with a message or a story or something I just enjoy doing. And, that's why I started to venture off. I started to join amazing people. If you want to find what you're really meant to do with your life, you need to join people who are on the same destination as you. I want you to know that. In order to get to a certain destination or a certain level of what you define as your dreams, define as your success, I'm going to tell you right now that the people who care about you the most are probably going to be the ones first to criticize you, to bring you down. You think they're going to be there, and sometimes they are, but sometimes those are the people that are going to criticize you first. And it's not that they don't believe in you, but it's not that they're trying to be mean. They think that they're helping you because they can't see what you are trying to accomplish in themselves. So for me, when I said, you know what, I'm going to be a motivational speaker, I'm going to be a coach for other individuals going through challenging experiences in their life, looking for clarity, looking for a sense of purpose in their life. People are like, Matt, why don't you just go back to your 9-to-5 job? Why don't you've gone through so much. Why are you playing this? Why aren't you just playing it safe? Why aren't you just, just living life like, you were before? And they just don't understand. And you know what I did? I said, I'm going to forgive them because they don't understand now, but they'll understand later. So if you have a dream, if you have something that you want to do with your life and you can do it, stop worrying what other people think, follow your heart, and get around people that are going to help you get to that destination. So after about another 2 years, it's now been about 3.5 years since I've been cancer-free. I'm now spoken on stages. I'm now, obviously with COVID, I've done a lot of Zoom calls, a lot of podcasts. I've coached other cancer survivors. I've coached other individuals who've gone through challenging experiences. But it took courage and it took a vision with being around the right type of people. So, I hope this helps you guys, and I hope this gives you a little bit of insight on if you're struggling right now, to let you know that this isn't the end of your road. If anything, this might just be the beginning of a new chapter in your life, a new beginning, a new and better way to go out and make a difference in the world. So, with that being said, I hope this really helped today. And I really want to kind of go through an exercise with you guys that I think might really, really help. Do you want me to open up any questions or anything right now, Francesca, or would you rather me just kind of...
I think, what we'll do is I'm going to stop recording right now. And then if anyone still has questions, we can hold those at the end of the session. So I'm going to stop recording.